Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 2 of the World with Nate podcast. This podcast was created to shed light on some of the stories and lessons that we accrued during our time here. My hope is that those stories will bring us all together in this thing that we all call life. My hope for this podcast episode is that you find it both enlightening and enjoyable. So, sit back and relax. I want you to enjoy the ride. Special thanks to my friend Buck Kern of Hawkeye Storage and Consulting for helping me bring Season 2 of The World with Nate to YouTube. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Season 2 of The World with Nate. I met Ashley years ago in our factory work together at Modern Fold, and never in a million years would have I imagined our life to come full circle and us to be sitting here sharing a conversation. So first, Thank you for coming on The World with Nate.
Thank you for having me.
Heck yeah. I wanted to have you on, Ash. You are extremely busy being the mother of 4, and life has thrown you curveballs, and you have strength and hope, and you've overcome these things, and you're rolling with life as good as you can be. And I think we can draw a lot out of that, the things that life has thrown you and how you've accomplished what you've accomplished and gotten to where you are. So thank you for coming, and I appreciate you taking the time to come on The World with me.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Heck yeah. So I said 4 kids. Break that down a little bit for me. You have 4 children.
Yes, I have 3 boys, 1 girl.
You did get lucky on the girls, huh?
Yes. Evan is 11. Elena is 10. James just turned 2, and Vonnie is just about 6 months.
Yeah, brand new baby boy.
Brand new,
Heck yeah. So, with your kids, the breakdown in age, the previous 2 are from a relationship in the past.
Yes, correct.
And we had spoke a little bit about co-parenting and that sort of things. It hasn't always been an easy road, but you guys have managed to do it.
Yes.
Let's talk about some of the things that have been tough in that regard.
It's really just meeting in the middle. You know, people ask how you do it, and I tell them my tongue's about 2 inches shorter than when we started, because it's biting your tongue and realizing that you're not always right.
Right.
You know, it's not always easy, but it's always the best decision to put your kids first.
Yeah.
You know, and like I said, you have to become friends again in order for that to work. And once you can get past the pettiness of a breakup or a failed relationship, whether it be, you know, cheating or whether it be just can't connect again, you know. And you just have to come to an acceptance and realization. And once you put your kids first, it just becomes so much easier. You know, like people come up to us because we are at our kids' games. They play travel sports, basketball, baseball, everything that they can be in, you know, typical American family right now.
Super busy kids.
Yes, sports broke.
Yes.
So, and people just come up and they tell us how, you know, inspiring it is to see our families, because my husband Nate and his wife Vanessa and our kids, they have twins that are 2.5.
Okay.
And then James and now Vonnie, and you will see all of us helping, because it takes a lot of people.
A village, right?
Yeah, it takes a village.
Yeah.
And it's just like we have it's nice to have a big family to rely on, you know, especially with everything that we've gone through with Nate and I and our 2 younger kids that aren't theirs, but they are a rock.
Right.
You know, you hear families say, well, it's not my weekend, you know, but with that, like, don't you want to spend that time with your kids, whether it's your weekend or not?
Right.
You know, I understand you need a break.
Yeah.
But your kids, you never need a break from your kids.
I agree.
You know?
I agree. I
like even when you're gone, you feel that guilt.
Piece of you is missing.
Yeah, you're like, oh, I feel so bad that we're having fun with our kids. You know,
it's cool for a couple hours.
Yes, but you do need that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's just important to put your kids first, and we do that.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
You guys are a testament to that. And the fact that he has a relationship now and they have kids and you do, and you guys have such a large family now. We're talking 6 kids between the 2, and you can blend them all together. It really says a lot about the type of people that you guys are, and I think that's awesome. And I know a lot in today's current society that is a reality. There's a lot of blended families, and we have got to focus on making sure it works. The dynamics don't matter to me,
Right.
whether it's how it's broke up. But we got to make sure it's
I always
a family.
say the true heroes here are the spouses.
Yeah.
Right. Can you imagine coming into a relationship where like, hey, I'm going to invite my ex and his wife to Christmas?
You have to be pretty secure, I would imagine.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
I don't know, but...
Yeah, and, we've formed friendships, like, that's a bonus mom. I know she's going to be there to take care of my kids if something's wrong. And they do. She does. She's wonderful. Shout out to Vanessa.
Heck yeah.
She's like the calendar queen. I can ask
You
her
got
when.
lucky.
Yeah,
Heck
when
yeah.
I don't know half the stuff because we have so much things going on, and doctor's appointments and schedules like that. And she's on it. So
yeah.
I appreciate her so much. It's fantastic to have someone like a second wife to rely on.
A giant family.
It is.
Yeah,
You just have to embrace that.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, life gave you that. And you got to make the most of it, right? Or if what's going to happen, it's not going to work, and that's not a benefit for anyone.
Right.
And then your oldest son was recently diagnosed with, say the term?
Alopecia. Totalis, I think is how you pronounce it. So he lost all of his hair, with exception of his eyelashes.
It was out of nowhere?
Yeah.
Because he had a full head of hair in one picture that I saw.
Beautiful.
Beautiful haircut, too.
Yeah,
nice
great.
fade.
Yeah, like going to the
hairline.
barber with Dad was like a thing. Like that was their thing. And school pictures, he went to get lined up, and there was a little spot, and it was September. So Tristan called me, and I'm like, okay, well, let's take him to the doctor.
Dad.
Tristan's his dad.
Okay.
So he and I took Evan. We met at the doctor's office, and we sat, and the doctor scraped his scalp and looked and said, hey, it's ringworm. And we're like, oh, okay, it's whatever.
Yeah, normal.
Yeah, he had just started football, and they were, sharing helmets, trying on all these helmets. Who knows what else kind of crap gets passed around.
Yep.
So we're like, yeah, we'll attribute to that. And October comes and got bigger. After
About
6 weeks,
later?
6 weeks of an oral antifungal.
It's not
gets
the way
bigger.
it should be going.
No. So we call back to the doctor, and they send us to dermatology. So we go to dermatology, and he said, no, that's alopecia. So they give us a topical steroid and putting on these creams and such. And then by Christmas, the day after Christmas, we were out for dinner with my mom for her birthday, and he took his hat off, and he just hair was falling out everywhere. And that night,
prior to, I'm sorry to
no, go ahead.
But prior to that, was this something that you had any education on?
No, we didn't have, his dad didn't have any
issues.
Family history or any issues with it at all. No, and I've heard of it. I've had families of kids might, have a spot here and there, and it kind of comes and goes, and we weren't super familiar with it. But when I called his dad, I said, Tristan, I think we need to shave his head, because we had been trying to hide it, taking hair and putting a ponytail in, and kind of just making it so it wasn't as noticeable, because he's 11, he's in 5th grade, and kids are impressionable, kids are mean, but I can honestly
young, right?
say, we have always been hey, if anything's going on at school, you need to talk to us, tell us, what's going on, and he hasn't had any issues with kids.
Good. And you guys are from a smaller community. You're from
Dyersville,
Iowa.
Field of Dreams.
Shout out, Field of Dreams. They're getting that renovation with that money.
Yeah,
it's exciting time to be Dyersville.
We'll see. Hopefully we stay small and quiet, though.
Heck yeah. Well, my wife, is from there, too, and we go back, and we like that piece of it, too. The quaint, people know each other. It's a nice little town.
Yes, it is.
So we'll hope those things remain.
Fingers crossed. I hope so.
So, being from a small town and that happening, your son is mixed.
Biracial.
I'm sorry.
Nuts are mixed.
Okay. I'm sorry.
People are biracial.
Yes.
And it's a preference. Everybody's different.
Okay.
I just refer to them as biracial.
Hey, yeah.
Dogs are mixed. Nuts are mixed. But
makes sense to me.
Yeah.
And that's something that I did not know. Look at that. You can teach an old dog
I know.
new tricks. Hell
absolutely.
Yeah. I appreciate that. Did that play any part in this? You said you shaved the head, and he hadn't had any issues, no teasing, none of that.
No.
It was smooth.
Yeah, smooth.
It's a testament to a small town.
And most people came up to him and they're like, hey, cool shaved head, because he loves basketball, and he's 5'8",
big kid,
190. and he's 11, and he's a big kid, and he excels at sports, and so everyone knows Evan because he's Big Evan. You know, he's always been Big Evan. He's always been.
It's not like he can hide in a crowd.
No, he's always been Big Evan, and a big teddy bear, a nice kid. Everyone knows Evan. Yeah. So they'd come like, hey, you like your shaved head, man? And he's yeah, cool, you know. Yeah. And everyone just figured he did it because
he
why
wanted
not?
to.
Yeah, why not? And then as things progressed and he lost his eyebrows.
Okay.
Then, you know, that's where we went and we said, you know, let's just roll with this. You know, let's be honest and let's talk about it. If someone asks, own it, you know, because we don't know if it's going to come back, you know.
So he may grow hair back.
We don't know.
No one knows.
Yeah, it's an autoimmune disease where for some reason your body's immune system attacks your hair follicles and it kills your hair follicles. And so you can lose a patch and it can grow back. You can lose all the hair on your body. Like Evan has lost everything but eyelashes. I'm talking legs, arms.
Yeah.
All of that. And so it's there's no cure. There's no cream. There's no anything. I mean, people inject steroids into their scalp to try to bring the hair back. Wow. And there's a lot of things, you know, studies right now. We're doing a high-dose vitamin D shot where they injected vitamin D because that's a vitamin D deficiency is part. There's studies that link it to that.
Yeah. Just trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Plus vitamin D is good anyway.
Yeah.
And most people are deficient in that anyway.
Yeah, they sure are. Yeah. And, you know, we had his levels tested, and what they would say is normal. It's not normal for everybody. Right. There is no normal. Right. You know, we can tell you there is no normal. Yep. Everybody is different. So, and, you know, going back with his shaved head, with James, our 2-year-old, going through chemo, you know, one of the things Evan said was like, I feel like I have cancer. And I'm like, well, just be grateful you don't. Yeah. You know, and maybe this is your cross to bear for James.
I like that.
And, you know, we have to just change the perspective, and the poor me becomes, why not me? Yeah. You know, and I think that, you know, that was one thing. It is mine. Yeah, it's mine. Like, what's the deal? We got to roll, man. Yeah. Go.
Yeah.
So.
There is huge strength in that.
Yeah.
In that. And it's funny you said that because it's how the episodes are going. Your episode is following Dallas's, So We Wave. Mm-hmm. And let's talk about how that plays significance in your life. You had mentioned that your son is 2 and undergoing chemotherapy. Yes. And that is for what?
He has Langerhans cell histiocytosis.
Wow.
LCH for short. Don't try to
And that is a cancer?
Yes. So as Dr. Dickens, the great and powerful Oz of Stead Family Oncology Department.
So you say that name and people are going to know who it is.
Yeah. If they are.
Goat.
Yeah, he's one of the goats there. Yeah. He would say, if I'm talking to grandma, I'm not going to refer to it as cancer. If I'm talking to another doctor, I'm going to talk to insurance, it's cancer. Okay. The main difference between the cancer cell and the LCH cell, when you splice it, they don't look the same under a microscope. But with Langerhans cell histiocytosis, basically,
holy cow,
it is.
You've gotten good
I know.
At that.
Listen, I know a lot of weird medical stuff. Basically, what happens is the Langerhans cell is part of the immune system. It's a cell in your white blood cell. Okay. And it just kind of goes out of control, and it just breaks down tissue, your organs and bone, and it's very similar to leukemia, only it's a different cell.
Eats your body.
Yeah. So James has started on his scalp, and it looked like cradle cap since he was probably 4 months old. You know, and you'd ask at your checkups, and I'm like, oh.
The well babies?
Yeah. And they're like, it's cradle cap, you know. And so
presented as
like a rash, almost like a crusty rash.
Yeah, we've dealt with cradle cap.
Any kid, anyone with kids have seen. It's gross looking, kind of waxy looking, and then he started getting ear infections, like in I don't know, when he was 10 months old, February.
And he is your third.
He's
child.
third. He's my third.
Okay.
Yep.
And at this point, the fourth was not around.
Yep,
Bonnie.
not yet.
Yeah, okay.
Not yet, yep.
So just to kind of give.
Yes, so James third, he's my son with Nate, my husband Nate.
Your husband Nate.
It's his first child, born during the height of the pandemic. April 13th of 2020 is James's birthday. So here's a baby coming at the height of pandemic. You know, you don't plan for those things. You don't plan for pandemics.
Right.
You can plan for a baby, which James was well planned. We were excited to have him, you know.
Yeah.
And so kind of going back to where his diagnosis came back, you know, we'd gone back and forth to doctors for ear infections, and he never really had a fever, but he would cry in the middle of the night, like that painful crying that was almost like, if you have kids, they have those night terrors, and you can't wake them, but they keep crying, and you're, as a parent, you feel terrible because you can't even soothe your kid, you know. So I remember the first time he had an ear infection, and it just smelled terrible. So we took him in, and the doctor goes, I can't even see his eardrum. Like, his ear is like full of fluid. So we're like, okay.
Makes sense.
Yeah, ear infection. So we go to his peds, and she looks in his ear. They give him medication. We do medication. We go, come back in a week. We'll check again. Didn't clear up. And so then they do, I don't know if anyone's ever had experience, but there's an antibiotic shot that they can give. They give a shot in each of the legs 3 times
for
in a row.
ear infections? Or?
It's just a stronger antibiotic that goes right into your body instead of orally.
Yeah.
So they did, we had to go in and you get one every day for 3 days. So we went in, did that, and nothing got better. And then we were going to we started another round.
More antibiotics.
Of the shots, because his ear infection just kept coming back. So at that point, I asked his pediatrician, I said, you know, when can we move from this and go
somewhere else?
Yeah, let's, you know, the thing with when you advocate for your kid's health, your insurance is the problem. Right. You know,
100%.
And there's just such a wall for your insurance. So James had to go through so many ear infections before, like, we can send you ENT now.
Right. And we have heard that horror story with other parents.
All the parents, anytime. And it's just a frustration.
Advocate for your kids. Advocate for your kids.
Yeah.
You're another testament to
all the money in the world you spend on insurance and health, and you
hands
still
are tied sometimes.
And so finally they sent us to ENT, and we played that game every week going in, and he would suck his ear out.
So not only, like, do you pay all this money to have shit insurance? I don't know. Maybe you guys have good, but ours is not great.
Right.
And then you pay deductibles, and then the time it takes to get to all these appointments.
The co-pays, the time off from work.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then holding your kid down while they stick a little tube and suck his ears out.
It's terrible.
Yeah, it sucks. You know,
it is. It's very bad when kids have medical problems.
Yeah.
I'm terrible with it. I can barely even handle our kids having a fever.
We've gotten better.
Well, you're forced to get better.
Yeah, we've gotten used to it.
Yeah,
you kind of become numb
to some of the things. I'm sure you have to.
Yeah, for sure. So kind of back to where we led up to diagnosis.
You had the problems with all these ear infections.
Yeah, this is February to May 10th. We go to May 10th, actually. And
the symptoms
are typical
he's crying.
Toddler stuff.
Okay.
You know, crying. After, you know, laying down for a while, he would cry, not sleep through the night.
Yeah.
And Nate and I joked, might as well have another kid. We're not sleeping.
Right.
You know.
Add
to the fire, you know, we joke about that. And May 10th comes around, and my husband and his dad are at Lowe's with James, you know, boys' trip to the Lowe's store.
Yeah.
And
spend 13 hours there.
He calls me, and it's a Monday, and he calls me. He's like, hey, James's head's kind of swollen. And I was like, well, that's kind of weird, you know. I'm like, well, call your mom, because grandma does daycare.
So she'll know.
Yeah, I'm like, you know, maybe she forgot to mention, you know, maybe he bumped his head. You know, he's a 13-month-old baby kid learning to walk, you know. And during this time, like, he was starting to walk at 10 months old and then kind of went backwards.
Regress.
Yeah, like kind of losing wobbly and stuff. But, you know, he's a kid. Like, that's normal. And so, you know, maybe we attribute it to, you know, maybe he hit his head. So she's like, no, I don't recall him hitting his head. You know, like, I know he, like, was whiny or crying a little bit, but I didn't see him hit his head. So I told my husband, we'll just wait and see if a bruise comes up. And if he has a bruise, then, hey, he hit his head. And if he doesn't, then, well, we'll call the doctor, I guess, you know.
With all these kids we have between the two of us, you cannot possibly investigate every single bump and bruise
No.
and cut, or we would never get anything done.
No, exactly.
So I understand your plight on, well, we'll just see what happens.
Yeah, just go with it,
Yeah.
But then, then the next day, Tuesday, I was like, I think I'm pregnant. So
You just felt it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
get it. I mean, I don't get it, but-
it'd be my fourth one.
Yeah.
And I'm old. So I was like, sure enough, and I was like, this is a faint line. So but it's there. There's 2. And I woke my husband up at like 5 a.m. He's like, oh my God. So that's, next
Yeah.
day. And then Wednesday we go see the ENT again. And so he looks in his ear and he's like, yeah, I see some swelling in there. Let's get a CT scan. On Friday they schedule for a CT.
Okay.
And he's like, it's probably just a cyst because sometimes you have extra sinuses and your body just encapsulates them in a sinus, and then it can look like swelling inside and on the outside. Maybe that's what's been going on. La-da-da. So then I take
Process of elimination.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So then I take another test and another test in between these days, and I'm for sure pregnant. So
The lines are more and more
and more and more, and
Okay.
so which all plays into
Sunday.
our crazy life and our
Yeah.
story that we had.
I know,
So
I love it.
Friday we go in for the CT scan. It was a conundrum. It was like they forgot to request IV. He needed an IV contrast. And with a 1-year-old, you can't expect a 1-year-old to sit in a CT for an hour. So they didn't
Right.
request him to be sedated. They forgot to tell us about no eating and drinking for 6 hours.
Right. So it was a shit show.
It was a mess.
Yeah.
It was a mess. We went at 8:30. By the time all of that got squared away with the ENT, they got the right orders put in. They admitted us because he had to be admitted because he was getting put under.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, he had milk, because the CT scan person said, oh, yeah, he can have a drink of milk. I'm like, okay. And they're like, no, he can't. Yeah, he can't eat or drink for 6
And that
hours.
pushes them back.
Yeah, so we had to sit in a small room
Yeah.
with him. We couldn't leave because we were already admitted, so it was like we could go home with him.
He had milk to sustain him for the next 6
6
hours. It
hours.
was a terror.
Yeah.
I've been there.
Oh my gosh. So they come and get him at 3:30, and I will not forget this. And they're like, you guys, it's been a long day. Would you go down to the cafeteria, get something, to eat or drink, and, we'll call you when he's done. I'm like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
Just do. And I've had plenty of experiences in hospitals with my dad and his cancer and everything. I'm like, whatever. This will take a while. If there's a problem, they'll call. So we go downstairs. I get a popcorn. I think I get a cookie because it's like now 4 o'clock. There's really not much in this small hospital,
Heck yeah.
in Dubuque. So they call us not much later. And they're like, the doctor needs you guys to come out. He needs to talk to you. And we're like, okay. He was maybe in there for 15 minutes at that point.
What did you start to think when that?
Not in my wildest dreams that what he was going to tell me, maybe it's not that bad.
Yeah.
Let's just kind of go up there. And so he brings us into the room. James isn't with us yet. He's still coming out of sedation. And the ENT came because he said, you know what, if it's a cyst and he's already out, I might as well just take care of it.
Yeah.
So he was there, and then he came in the room, and he's like, James has a mass. And we're like, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
He said it's about 4.1 centimeters. Just sitting there.
You probably didn't even hear anything else.
Yeah, this is my husband's first child, and we're thinking like, this is my third, and my very first thought is like, oh my God, he has cancer. Like how, and he's like, I don't know what it is. I just know there's a mass. And I'm like, could it be something else? No. Like a mass on a CT scan is completely like it's a mass. So there's no more holding out hope that it's a cyst at this point. So I call my mom. We're crying. And my mom just said, just relax. You don't know what.
This was after your dad's passing? Or
Yeah. Yes.
Your dad passed
2 years.
from cancer?
3 years, yeah. My dad died of cancer. Actually, the day James's swelling came up, May 10th, was my dad's death anniversary, his 3-year anniversary.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Just to give people a little backstory of how it is in your family.
Right.
So when you got this diagnosis, it really probably hit you very tough.
Yeah.
I can imagine.
Yeah, like sick feeling.
Yeah.
The entire time going through everything that day and then getting into Iowa City and getting further testing and all of that such, the whole time my head was, how am I going to tell my older two? How am I going to tell Evan and Elena? Because they were so close with my dad. He lived with me. We took care of him. He died in my living room. You know, they helped me take his meds. Like, my dad had lung cancer and he had a lung pleura. So basically it was a tube in his lung, and every 2 days I would drain a liter of fluid out of it.
And the kids are seeing this and experiencing this and the pain.
They're
and
singing.
suffering.
They're reading Bible stories, reading stories, listening to music in my dad's bedroom. And that's at my house. Yeah.
It's hard for me, too.
Yeah.
My grandma just go through it. It just brings back so many terrible memories of how bad it is.
Yeah. Except for, but good memories, too.
To be
because,
able to be there,
like, you know, so with my dad and being able to take care of him when James gets diagnosed, I was like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, I just went through all, you would think that you'd be done, right?
You'd get the pass.
Yeah. And you're angry because you're like, why?
It's hard.
It's the why. Always the why. But then after, you know, everything kind of like falls into place, you know, leading up to that weekend after we got the news that James had a mass, we called our family and let them know. And it's still COVID. It's 2021 May.
Right.
So we're still in COVID. And we said, everyone come to our house on Sunday. We're having a get together. We're going to cook. We're going to have a barbecue. We're just going to enjoy this day. Yeah. Because Monday morning, who knows what's going to happen. Right. And I remember my sister, Callista, she called me and she's like, I just don't know if, you know, with COVID and everything, if it's good for everyone to get together. Because what if he gets sick? Yeah. You know, and
we had those same conversations.
Yeah. Ugh. COVID just takes the joy, the fear, everything. It just takes it all. Yeah. Because you can't have support. Right. So leading to that, I just told Callista, I'm like, listen, if tomorrow I find out my kid has cancer, I want this day to just be normal. Yeah. I just want one more day of just us, you know, having fun, being together as a family, enjoying this normalcy. Yeah. You know? So we all got together and we have all these pictures, you know, Tristan and Vanessa and the twins and the grandparents and my mom and, you know, an old timers, you know, your dad's with you, you know. Yeah. He's probably cussing up a storm. And, you know, and the joke's always been, you know, James is named after Nate's grandpa, who also died of cancer. I think 2011 maybe. But so in James's bedroom, we have his pictures, the pictures of Grandpa John and Grandpa Jim above his crib, his guardian angels. Heck yeah. Which when we set the crib up before he was born and we had these pictures, we didn't know how important they would be. Right. So the joke's always been they must have been sleeping or messing around, because, you know, they were jokesters and they had great sense of humor. It's like, so. Where you been? Did you skip this day? Or, you know, when you think of your loved ones that are supposed to protect you, but at the end of the day, James is still here. So they must have learned something and got something out of it. But heck yeah. So anyway, we back into Iowa City and that whole thing. I mean, it's just a whirlwind. Like, you get there, and my mom went with us because we needed a sound mind, right? Yeah. Your two parents, terrified. You have this toddler. Just got the bomb dropped. Yeah, like we went in for one appointment, and they are like, "No, you need to go here and go have an MRI, and you need to do all these things." So my mom rode with us, and they wouldn't let her come in. Because of the protocols. And we're just like that. How do you expect two parents to function during the hardest time of their lives without having some type of support there? Because I can assure you, the social worker that you're giving me to support me right now is not going to be as good as my mom.
I know. You know, I 100% agree with that. And unfortunately, that was reality for a bunch of families.
It still is.
Yeah.
It still is.
Yeah.
As we,
in some places in America, it still is.
yeah.
And that's terrible. When
know.
you've went through those things and you've experienced that and you realize, like, tomorrow's not given.
Right. It's not.
You just got to make the best of it today.
Yeah, and don't challenge the universe.
No, because it'll bite you hard.
Yeah, she'll come
Right?
back.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, yeah, that week being in Iowa City. You know, our CT Friday, we were in Iowa City on Monday, and they called us on Saturday. They got us scheduled. Like, they moved pretty quick.
Because he was young. How
Yeah,
young are we talking?
13 months.
Wow. And then you're pregnant with the second
Yeah.
babe.
Mm-hmm. Like fresh,
Yeah.
like very fresh pregnant.
Whew, turn
Yeah.
it up.
Yeah, hormonal.
I bet.
You know, and poor Nate can't just have a normal pregnancy life. Have kids, like, you know, like
Yeah.
I always felt so guilty because I had Evan and Elena, you know, it's just an easy, normal pregnancy. And then we have
Yeah.
these two wonderful blessings
babes.
that have also thrown us for a loop.
Yeah.
But, you know, usually the rule of thumb, you know, you wait until you're, you know, after your first trimester to share the news of your pregnancy. But we needed light, you know, we needed some good news. So we shared that with the grandparents, you know, like, you know, here's a little bit of, you know, happiness in this really scary, dark time.
Yeah. Because you don't know, at this point, you don't know the outcome of your son.
We didn't even have a diagnosis yet, you know, and that process takes years in 3 days.
Yeah.
You know, it
Yeah.
feels like eternity.
Yeah.
You know, Monday we had scans and MRI and x-rays. And then Tuesday he had a biopsy. And his tumor in the scan on Monday was 5.2. So it already went from 4.1 to 5.2.
Holy cow.
And then he
Grown
had a
lot.
little, and he had a little, like, bump on the back of his head that we thought he hit his head. No, typical kid. And that was a 2-centimeter tumor also on the back of his head. So he had 2 tumors and then the skin involvement. So during, you know, the guesstimate, you know, well, these are the things it could be. These are what we're leaning towards. It could be this, but it's likely probably this, you know. And I Google.
Yeah.
I have to.
Yeah, I
For
know.
me, worst case scenario, knowing what that could be and then not getting it, that makes things so much better for me.
you. Yeah, I get
like
it.
I have to know everything.
That wormhole that you can put
Yeah,
yourself
oh my
into.
gosh. So, yeah, because they said, you know, it's either rhabdomyosarcoma, Ewing sarcoma, or LCH. Well, in Googling those 3, you're going to pray for LCH. Like,
Out of those 3?
out of those 3.
Okay.
Yeah, rhabdo.
Because I don't know what those other 2
No,
were either. So,
they're
for
soft
reference,
tissue.
It's terrible.
A soft tissue cancer.
Yeah.
Limbs are removed. Generally, for those they do radiation and chemo and then removal. So if you think about where James's
Right.
tumor in the left temporal lobe, it's kind of hard to remove those
Right.
from there.
Right.
So I was Googling, and another backstory. My youngest sister Jackie, she's married to her husband Alan, my brother-in-law. They were living in Seattle at the time, and he is going into peds surgery. So he was out in Seattle doing cancer research, pediatric cancer research.
Oh, wow.
And then also working at kind of doing some stuff at the hospital there. And so he is a world of knowledge and
Yeah.
help and a shoulder. The oncology team would come in, we'd put him on speakerphone, and he'd
Wow,
listen and
yeah.
ask questions. And I remember texting him like, I want LCH, right? Like, I want that.
Yeah.
Out of everything. He's like, yeah, that's going to be the best one. So
Yeah.
I think we got the
Definitive.
on Thursday, and he had a chemo port put in on Friday.
Holy cow. Yeah. So they went right to work. And you
Absolutely.
said it had grown.
Yeah,
already in just that short time.
Yeah, it had grown. Looking at pictures of him, like his ear
You
started
noticed
to
it
pop
after?
outwards. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
so, yeah, we were in the hospital Monday through Friday that week. And he started chemo on Friday, his first
Holy smokes.
round of 12
Now,
months.
I saw what it was like for an adult. Mm-hmm. What's it like for a child?
So because we prayed for the right one, we got a little reprieve.
Yeah.
James's chemo is like out of a 10. What he started with was a 3. So we dodged some bullets because the worst part is holding your kid down and letting them access a port.
Yeah. I can't imagine how bad it hurts and how terrible it is.
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
It's traumatic. We cry as much as he does, And sitting there and just kind of like, that was the hardest thing to comprehend. My 1-year-old, we just had his birthday party.
Yeah.
Has
so
a
young,
port.
So little.
Yeah, has a port, like a chemo port. It's so weird. And like they come in, they're giving you booklets, like to study and read about how to manage. Like, what do you do? I mean, one thing like people don't know with like a port, the risk of infection is really high.
Yep.
So I don't know if anyone shared that on this. I don't recall anyone, but if they have a fever of 100.9 or higher, you have to go to the emergency room immediately.
100.9. That's barely even a fever.
Right. And think about molars, teething.
All of it, yeah.
Everything.
Kids spike that fever some
All the
nights
time.
just because,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. So, they're saying there, like, if this happens, here's this big orange paper, or here's a little paper to put in your wallet. You have to go to the ER. You give them this paper. You call us. You let us know where you're going.
Wow.
We call them, and there's a regimen that they have to follow because the risk of the port's right into the bloodstream.
Right.
So, our life, not only does it change because you have got this diagnosis, but, like, everything that you would do as a normal parent with a kid with a little fever, you're like, meh.
Yeah.
Take
Completely
some time.
changes.
Yeah, it's your life. I remember the first time he had a fever. I was like, I was supposed to have this meeting with my bosses because during James's treatment, I worked full time, but I worked remote. So, and my job was my normalcy, so I needed that for just myself.
Yeah.
And many times sitting in the U on level 11, making sales calls,
Right.
it's like that was, just kind of kept my mind busy.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, but, I called her and I was like, James has a fever. I have to go to the emergency room right now. She's like, okay. And I did. And I went, and it was the worst experience. One of the worst experiences. Because one of the things with having a pediatric cancer patient, not every hospital is equipped.
No, yeah.
To manage
lot are
that.
not.
None.
Especially in our area.
Right.
Rural Iowa.
Right. And you're like, thank God, because there's not tons of kids having to come here for
Right.
them. But also, it's terrible because, and no offense to the staff, the hospital, and we know with everyone's short-staffed, and healthcare is like, that's an industry that's been hit so hard, and they're overworked and underpaid, and traveling nurses and jobs, and people coming, they go. And so, we really struggled with that. We carry our own port needles. We carry our own tegaderm strips. We know, like, what to tell them now.
Yeah.
And actually now, if James has a fever, I go to Iowa City.
Yeah.
Because by the time you find someone who's comfortable to treat and help, we could be there already.
Yeah.
And it's not always the best process because that risk of infection. But what's the difference if I'm driving an hour and a half to get help or if I'm sitting in an ER for 4 hours and I still haven't gotten what's needed, They have to access a port. They don't carry the right size needles. They have to pull blood from their arms and they're little and they don't have all of the really helpful things that Iowa City has. They
Thankfully,
have,
we have
yeah, they have these really cool machines that they just hover this blue light over your arm and it finds your veins for you. So it takes all the guesswork out of a little kid,
Yeah.
So thank God that, that we have them and it's 90 miles for us. But like, we're grateful because there are people who are coming from the other side of the state that have to come back and forth. So
And the care that they provide there.
It's amazing.
Unmatched, right?
Like, no, you can't.
We're
you
very
can't
fortunate
even
to have that in a small agricultural community.
Yeah, it's a great place.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know where we'd be without them and Bread Garden, the coffee shop there. Like, that was also...
Shut up.
Yeah. You guys are the best.
So when you got the initial diagnosis of LCH, say what that is.
Langerhans cell histiocytosis.
What is the outlook like?
Depending on how quickly you find it. So James has LCH multi-system, which means he has it in 2 places. So his skin involvement and bone, soft tissue involvement.
Okay.
If it gets into certain places, kidney, liver, your gut, also, like, gut is very, very dangerous because failure to thrive, you can't eat, right? Because So James's prognosis, because we've caught it early, it hasn't gotten into any other of those, like, internal organs that you need, other than your bone and skin. We say that, hey, at least it wasn't here, but his prognosis is really great. Within his chemo treatment was once a week, every week for 6 weeks. Then a scan. Scan shrunk in half, both tumors shrunk in half within the 6 weeks of chemo. And with LCH and the tumors with LCH, they don't use radiation for treatment. So we dodged a huge bullet there because me being pregnant and radiation and, it's...
Can't be by each other. There's a ton of other stuff.
So, thank God for that. So all these silver linings in the dark hole that we were in. But, his tumor shrank in half. With LCH, bone involvement of the skull, his tumor eroded away at the skull, and it was just a hairline away from entering, like, the brain fluid sac.
Wow.
So also we got there on time. And then with the LCH in your skull, it also can affect your pituitary gland. And so your pituitary gland is what regulates your sodium, right, and fluid in your body. And so
water retention.
Yeah. So with it's called diabetes insipidus, what happens, and that affects your pituitary gland. So that he started showing symptoms of that. And where he would be like, you couldn't get enough fluid in him. He would just be chugging water, and then blowing up diapers. Like, if you ever took a kid swimming in a non-swim diaper, let him sit in water and it just implodes everywhere. We had to, like, that was happening in his crib with his diaper. And he'd be just chugging and chugging. So he had to have a scan to check his pituitary gland, and there was a very small light up. They say, see this little light here on your pituitary? That is where his DI is. So he had partial DI, even though it was the tiniest bit. And he was also on very high-dose steroids. So, like, what do steroids do? Make you hungry, thirsty, and just angry,
I don't know what they do to a little one.
So, steroid, you can talk to any parent who has a kid in treatment, and they're like, it's steroid week.
And so you're just, know what you're talking about?
Yeah, they will know.
They just become monsters or what?
Hungry, the sleep pattern is awful.
Yeah.
And
kids are so in tune to that stuff. Like, I'm just thinking about my own kids. I have got to keep them on the same sleep and eating patterns, so they're turning into crazies.
Yeah, and then they don't sleep well at all. Yeah. You miss a nap on your schedule, and you don't sleep very well. And
double down on terribleness.
And we were already used to that because what we had learned from James having that tumor is when he was laying down, all that pressure in his head, and it was pain. It wasn't he was crying because he was having night terrors. Right. So he was in pain. There was a night that week in the hospital where he was screaming. I couldn't console him. And a doctor just happened to walk by, and he came in, and he's like, he needs pain meds. This is a pain scream. Yeah. And then you sit back and you're like, God, I'm an idiot. I'm a terrible parent. Well, how did I not know that he was in pain, But
can't tell you.
Yeah, you feel terrible. Yeah, and they gave him morphine.
Yeah, morphine for a little.
Yeah.
It's serious.
And they sent us home with morphine because of that tumor and the pressure and the pain, because he's got to sleep, but laying down caused so much pain. So,
it was a lose-lose battle. Yeah, it was. Your tail.
Yeah, now you're giving your kid morphine, chemo, and you come home with a bag of medications and a whole new regimen. Like, you can't give Tylenol when he has a fever.
Right.
So you
implications
you have to wait to see what the fever does. So if in an hour, if it goes up, then you're back to going to the ER. So.
And this has become your new normal.
Yeah. So back to kind of his chemo with the DI, you have to change it, and they give a chemo called cytarabine.
Okay.
And that level goes up, and with the first 6 weeks of what he was on vinblastine, that was okay. He didn't have those 6 when the typical chemo symptoms, throwing up, hair loss, he had minimal hair loss. After each round, he loses hair, but he's never lost all of his hair. But once they moved him to cytarabine, that's when our lives just flipped upside down. Chemo is every Friday, his chemo treatment would be Friday. We'd go in, have chemo within 14 hours later, in the middle of the night, he'd get a chill, he'd spike a fever, and then throwing up, and then ER. And then the regimen is go into ER, they give you an antibiotic, they send you home. If he has another fever in 24 hours, you come back in, do the same thing. So you're accessing his port, you're redrawing labs, you're doing all these things.
Every time.
Yep. And then cytarabine is such a stronger chemo, and it would, he'd be neutropenic, where your neutrophils are part of your immune system, and they would drop down to below 500. And so then you get admitted. Your white blood cell count would be too low. You get admitted.
Yeah.
So then, after every treatment, every 3 weeks, we'd be in the hospital for 4 to 5, 6 days until his numbers came up. There was one time he was admitted for a cold, and he had to have a blood transfusion because his numbers.
Are you taking time off work, or are you just trying to make
balance? You just balance. So my husband.
Tired?
My husband worked. He would take a few days off. I always stayed with James in the hospital, and my husband would go back to work because he does a physical job. He works for the Avalon Body Center, Collision Center. He works on cars, so he couldn't just work from home. Yeah, so
don't really have that,
right? And I carry the insurance. So I got to work.
Yeah, especially right now.
Yeah, exactly. And so I would work from there. And, I know there was times my mom would come and stay a day or so.
Takes a village.
Yeah. But when he's in there, he's sleeping. He's tired, So, and he was still pretty young yet, for the most part during that summer, it was literally every 3 weeks we'd be back in there. And I'm pregnant at this point, right?
Trying to grow a human body.
Yeah, and sleep in the hospital, which
on 2 hours of sleep.
Oh my gosh, this is the worst sleep ever. But, and we just struggle, and you made it work. And finally, Dr. Dickens, we said, we're expecting. And this has to be the cytarabine that's causing these fevers. The last time he was in the hospital, his fever was 106.2.
Jeez, and that gets scary.
Yeah,
that's super
but
high.
they're like, it's just like, it is just the way it is.
Yeah.
Anyone else panic mode, and they're like, yeah. They're so immune to that.
Yeah. That stuff comes in all the time.
Yeah. So, at that point, I remember it was September, I believe, the 2nd. We came home from his last, being inpatient from the chemo, making him sick, and it was awful. That was the 106 fever time.
This past September?
Yep, this past September.
Okay.
And we're like, Dr. Dickens, we're going to talk to him about the cytarabine and see what else we can do, and maybe rescan, because a lot of things that DI presents itself, it also is the same presentation of the steroid he was on. Being overly hungry, overly thirsty. And so that's the thing with all of these diseases, that something's like the little things could actually be big things, because all the symptoms of one thing can be symptoms of something else, but be completely different, very small or very big. Yeah. And so, that was one of the things that we kind of circled back. And that's what's great about the team. You can ask those questions and they listen.
Yeah.
And we circled back and, finding out, knowing we were expecting and we were going to have a baby in January, it wasn't feasible for us to continue to go back and forth if it was, in fact, caused by the chemo. And maybe he didn't need to be on that. But the thing is, with DI, once you have it, you can't reverse it. If it's partial, we can halt it from taking over his entire pituitary gland. So that's why it was important that we moved that to that chemo. But we went back and we saw his endocrinologist who we see for his DI and pituitary. And, it was very small, and she felt, his sodium levels and everything have always been good. He's not taking medication for the DI. You know, what they give you is basically a thing to retain your fluid. It's like so that he's not peeing all that out and losing all of his sodium. And through all of his testing and lab and stuff, it was looking good. So Dr. Dickens is like, hey, we'll move back to where we were. If there are any, they watch him very closely, the sodium levels, everything. If anything's off, then we're putting him back on it. And we're like, that's great. Like, we agree. So we came home from that last stay, and I had my 20-week ultrasound the next day.
Okay.
And so we go to that, and that, you know, is another part of our University of Iowa Stead Family Children's Hospital journey.
Yes.
So
a whole nother piece.
Vaughn. Levon Christian Hall.
Yes.
I had someone call yesterday to talk to Levon. And I was
he can't speak
he's 6 months old. And she said, oh, I didn't know it was a baby. And I'm like, yeah, that name will really trip you up.
Yeah.
We only call him Levon if he's being naughty. Yeah. He's Vaughn or Vonnie now.
Okay. So talk about that. You went in for your ultrasound.
My 20-week ultrasound, we went in. I did my care in Dubuque.
Okay.
And my husband and I are there. So we're like, see what it is. Mm-hmm. You know, we're going to find out gender, make sure everything else is okay, you know. And, you know, looking around, and she's like, well, do you want to know what it is? And I was like, yeah. And secretly, I was hoping for a girl. Sorry, Bonnie.
So you could have two and two?
2 and 2, even out the playing field, you know.
I get it.
And we had a boy, and my husband we were both very happy. Yeah. My husband, super happy. He's the last boy in his family to carry the family name.
So he's gotta.
Yeah, we need another hall out here.
Yep.
And James is named after Nate's grandpa.
Yep.
Vaughn is named Nate's grandma's Levon. Nate's great uncle Jim, Grandpa Jim's brother's Levon. He married a woman named Levon.
Yes, I saw that.
Yeah, and my great aunt is Levon.
Right.
So Levon was kind of like, if it was a girl, if James had been a girl, we were throwing around being Levon. You were calling her Vonnie.
Yeah.
Von Hall, like, that's a really cool name.
It is. I like it
kind
a
of
lot.
a cool name.
Yeah.
So anyway,
there's a lot of possibilities.
Yes, it is. So, you know, we're in the ultrasound. It's a boy. We're excited. And she's like, I'm going to go get the doctor. And I was like, okay. Sit and wait.
Yeah.
The 5 minutes, that seems like an hour.
Yep, eternity.
Yep, and she comes in, and they're ultrasounding me and pointing and looking and such, and they're just sitting there, and she's like, we have a concern with your placenta.
Dang.
Why not? Right?
Yeah,
Why not? And she said, we're going to have to refer you to University of Iowa. My husband and I literally said, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And we're not in public swears, you know, to each other,
you know.
In
the house.
Yeah, closed doors.
Yeah.
But like there was no other, like,
I get it.
We had no way, because the whole time we said, well, I'll just have a baby in Iowa City. We're here all the time.
Yeah.
You know, we said it all the time, just joking. Well,
careful what you wish for, actually.
yeah, I know.
Yeah.
And it was a Thursday. Wednesday, we came home from James being in the hospital. I got home, unpacked, everything. Yeah. Thursday, I have my ultrasound and get told we have to go to Iowa City.
Back.
Friday, they call me and say, pack a bag, get to Iowa City.
Because
you have to be there by 1:30.
High risk.
Yeah, and I, at this point, didn't really know what it was. They said, the doctor told me I had placenta accreta, which is where your placenta kind of nubs up and kind of attaches to your uterus. But what happened with mine, it started to spread through my uterus and growing through my uterus. So we leave that appointment, and I call my sister Calista. And I was like, guess what?
You're going to drop a bomb on you.
Yeah. And so the doctor told us at Dubuque, she's like, with this pregnancy complication, your uterus basically like spreads thin, you know, and that's what's like, or your placenta, your placenta spreads thin, and it just kind of grows out of control, and that's your life support for the baby too. So she said, usually with this type of complication, they have you deliver around 34 weeks. Okay, 34 weeks. Okay, that sucks. Because he's going to have to go to NICU, and we're going to have to doctor in Iowa City, and we're juggling James and chemo, and now we have
another baby
this
in the
situation.
hospital.
Right. And we'd always said, if we were not pregnant when we were pregnant with Vonnie, we probably would not have wanted to have another kid because of the stress that we were with James,
Yeah.
So fast forward to the next day when they tell me to get down here right now, and we go, and they do another ultrasound, and they're like, you definitely have placenta previa, and we're concerned that your placenta is getting into your bladder. So that means it's on the outside now.
Right.
And with the precreta, accreta, increta, all the cretas, basically I had the cretas. And the concern is if your placenta tears away or if you go into labor, you will bleed to death and hemorrhage.
Yeah.
There's me living an hour and a half away from Iowa City. If I went into labor, I probably wouldn't have survived.
Right, yeah.
So we started our doctoring there once a week, going in, having an ultrasound, having a check, and then I had to have an MRI done to see at what level everything was, where my placenta was. And basically your placenta looks like Swiss cheese. So, right, and when I was in that first appointment, I was like, okay, we're trying to wrap our heads around it. And I'm like, okay, well, they said we deliver 34 weeks, sometimes 36 weeks, but just depending. And she said, no, it's 28 to 30 weeks is when you'll deliver.
That's way different from 34, 36.
Yeah, way different.
Yeah.
It was just a whirlwind. At least we knew our way around.
I suppose,
hey, Fridays is walking taco day at Children's Hospital.
That's the way you got to look at it, actually.
Yeah. So here we were back in this whole new world. Oh, new world, same world.
Yeah.
Just different
spin.
Yeah. Just flip the.
And that time period was when?
It was September. So James was diagnosed May. So now we're in September of same year.
And then you have to go weekly. Mm-hmm. And then when did they decide that the baby needed to come out?
So I think it was around my 26th week. I checked in and they said, because you live so far away, we were thinking we're going to admit you early and keep you.
Just to navigate any possible risk.
Because if I went into labor, I was there.
Right.
And that meant being admitted into the hospital where nobody can visit.
Right, because of the
3 kids.
Yeah. Who are still doing life.
Still doing life, which plays back into, thank God I have a co-parent that my kids could still go home.
And still do
they're with
school.
Mom and Dad.
Yeah.
And they're at school.
Yeah.
They're
still keep normalcy.
Yeah, some sense of normalcy.
Yeah, some sense.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, I go in. I had a 27-week ultrasound, and I went by myself. I packed my things because I had kind of convinced them. My sister and my brother-in-law had since moved home, and they live a mile away from the hospital.
Yeah.
And I convinced them. I was like, hey, what if I just stay with my sister?
Yeah. She's
a mile away. I can still be a mom to my kids because at this point they were saying that I could deliver at 30 weeks, maybe, if they kept an eye on me. So I'm at 27, so that's 3 weeks.
3 more weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when I got in there, they're like, we could do that. So I went in for my ultrasound on my 27-week appointment, and she said, I can't let you leave.
And what was the reasoning behind that?
Because my placenta was...
the shape that it was in.
Mm-hmm, yeah, it was just...
Wouldn't have been viable.
It's like a tumor. It just spreads and grows. And I had a bladder scope. They put a camera in my bladder to check. What happens is everything's so vascular. Your body, doubles your blood when you're pregnant? You just all of a sudden you create all this blood,
Yeah.
And so with all of the extra, it's so vascular. When you look at an ultrasound, they turn on these lights, right? And you can see all the lights and what's blood and the flow of the blood. And mine just looked like a tornado, like a Doppler tornado. It was just a mess. So she said, I cannot.
What's the reasoning? Was there reasoning? What?
I'm not sure the exact reasoning. From what I've read, because I research and such, I found that it's actually becoming more and more prevalent. It's happening more frequently. The risk of death is 7%. Of a mother.
For the mother, okay.
Your chance of death is 7%, which is not terrible. 7%, right? No, if we're talking COVID numbers, but you have to turn 93%, you're going to live.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Look at that number. Don't focus on the other one. That's how I got through everything.
Yeah.
But I had 2 previous C-sections.
Okay.
And the scar tissue from the C-sections, that part of what they think causes that is the placenta connects to that scar tissue and then grows through. That's part of it. Yeah. And it is getting more prevalent. People are having more C-sections.
Right. My wife's midwife, so I get schooled in all of these things.
Oh, for sure. So she's very much probably familiar.
Yeah, she'll love hearing about this.
Oh, yeah. It was a great experience.
Well,
so
from your end,
that day I got admitted, I was 27 weeks, with the plan of me delivering maybe 30 weeks.
So you were going to try to stretch it out.
Right, because after 28 weeks, the percentage of the babies surviving, it's
dramatically
so
increases.
Big. So big. So my husband comes and packs his bag and comes down, and we bunk up in a room. And oh man, every day I immediately was just a walking pincushion, because I had to be prepared for surgery immediately.
Yeah.
So I have scars from the needles. They were huge. They look like fork tines.
Yuck.
This is terrible. My husband was like, this is so gross. And one of them blew.
Yeah.
So I had to get repoked with the biggest one. And I just had to so I couldn't do anything. My husband had to help wash my hair, because I had all these needles and you're
it hurts if you move the wrong way.
And the whole time I'm sitting there my poor baby, my poor 2-year-old
who has just went through
get pokes all the time like this, and you're suck it up. So
it can give you some perspective.
Yeah, it just push you to just.
I liked how when we were talking about your oldest son and losing his hair and having the insight at such a young age and such a kind heart to think about his little brother. Almost makes me tear up. It's a testament to the kids you guys are raising. So
he's a good brother.
Oh,
they're good siblings.
That's
they're
awesome.
Really good.
Heck yeah. You're blessed.
We can talk about them all day. They're fantastic.
Yeah.
But go. Yeah.
So anyway, we're at 28 weeks. We're
at 27 weeks.
27.
We were going to get to 28 weeks. Problem being short-staffed. And because of what I had going on, there had to be a large team of people. So I had to have my blood tested, because you lose a lot of blood. Always, most people are going to need transfusions. After delivery, you're potentially going to go to ICU or not, just depending on how things go.
Right.
So there was a lot of things leading up to that day, and it was, how can we get a team? I had to have an oncology doctor, the urology doctor, and then obviously the delivery.
Right.
There were probably 25 people in the surgery room when I got wheeled down.
That it's
just they all had a role. 7 nurses took care of Vaughn when he was born and wheeled him out.
Yeah.
I had 2 anesthesiologists that were on with me the whole time. The week leading up, they said, it looks like it's going to be this day. Great. They called me and said, no, it's tomorrow, the 27th. We're going 27 weeks, 6 days. So we're just 1 day shy of 28 weeks. The baby was measuring, at one point, it was 2 pounds, 9 ounces. So, I grow him big, thank God. James and Elena were 9'5" when they were born. Yeah. So I was like, hey, we'll be fine, he'll be fine. We were able to get everything needed. There were steroid shots 3 days up before delivery. You had to get steroid shots to help with the baby's lungs.
To help them make sure they were fully developed.
To push them to develop more.
That's one of the last things that, and when we're talking about that period of time,
Yeah, that's the real
last
importance.
crucial pieces.
Yeah, you gotta breathe.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's crazy, but all the things that they did to prep me, because it was more of like, the baby, but also for me, right?
Yeah.
At that appointment, that appointment in Iowa City, the option to terminate the pregnancy was given, and that was never something that I said 7%. That's nothing, So we got this far, so we're gonna be okay. We're gonna be fine. We'll be fine. We got through with James. We got, all of us. We're gonna be okay. And that night before, they moved us into this room, and it was like a small closet, and it was like an exam table that I had to sleep on, which you don't sleep.
Right.
They had to do a magnesium drip, which the magnesium helps reduce the risk of cerebral palsy. In these.
Jeez.
So for 12 hours,
Yeah.
I was hooked up to a machine, or I was hooked up to an IV for magnesium. And they'd come in every hour, tap on you to check your reflexes. Then you'd have to go to the bathroom. So there was no sleep. And the light in the room didn't turn off.
Yeah.
And there was this sink. And my husband slept with it under the sink and a trash can blocking the light so he could get some sleep that night. Yeah. And it was so funny. Oh my gosh, you had to stay light. I think there was like a Shack pizza at, I don't know what pizza place had it, but it was like the Shack pizza. I don't remember. Shackaroni, I think.
I don't know.
Okay. But we had to have it. So it was just one of those funny moments.
Yeah.
And that pizza box, he got taped to our wall as like decor, and it moved with us. Yeah, it moved with us, and I believe it's in Bonnie's
That's awesome.
safekeeping boxes. But anyway, the night before delivery was just no sleep, no rest, and just like high anxiety.
I can imagine.
Yeah, magnesium makes you really sick to your stomach.
And being in that place where you've spent time in those crucial, hard moments of life, it doesn't make it welcoming. That's not the place you want to be.
I was born in DU.
Yeah.
I was born there, and James is there. At least we were familiar, and we could trust. Like, we had that trust, even though this was a completely different group of people. But like, we've seen
the
what
miracles
they do. Yeah,
that
it's
come
just
out of the U.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
amazing.
Yeah, it's a great place.
Heck yeah. So Vonnie made his appearance when?
10:27. They wheeled me down at 8 a.m. and magnesium makes you sick, and I was throwing up, and my nerves were going crazy. Yeah. And I had asked him, I was like, I can't find my dad's rosary. And I held that when I gave birth to James, and I could not find it. So she brought me a different one, and it was actually my rosary that I made for my first communion.
Heck yeah.
So
Well,
I was holding on to that so tight, because just like, you gotta have faith. Yeah, lean on something, because I'm by myself. Nathan couldn't come with me, and the prep for that was just like it was the scariest moment of my entire life. I almost fainted at one point. They were putting my epidural in, and then they put in this thing in my wrist to keep an eye on my blood pressure. Another fork tine. Oh my gosh, And it was terrifying.
Yeah. And being there by yourself.
Yeah, and we're just watching people just move so quickly. And this woman held my hand, one of the nurses in there, and I don't know her name. And if I ever saw her, I wouldn't remember what she looked like, because I only remember her pupils, because I stared at her and held my rosary and held her hand, and she just breathed with me. And I was praying, because I just needed to calm my mind. And I was like, they put the epidural in, and my leg went zing, and they're like, oh, that's in the right spot.
Oh, good.
Oh, good. Good. And then I'm like, I think I'm going to pass out. And so they laid me down. And they were very adamant to make sure that, like, I didn't feel anything. And, I've had epidural before, and with my son, it didn't take, and I felt everything on one side of my body. And with James, with my C-section, I remember they were poking me, and I'm like, I can feel you poking me. And they're like, can you feel? I'm like, are you poking me? And they said, yeah. And I'm like, I can feel it. I know the difference, of pressure and poke. So I just had those anxieties of concern, like, I'm going to feel this, because with this type of C-section, C-section, it's a classic C-section. So they cut above the belly button, around the belly button, and then all the way down. Because the baby has to come from the top so that they can work on the placenta and the uterus. Because
afterwards, to stop bleeding. And
yeah, because I had to have a hysterectomy. So because of, you can't unattach the placenta from the uterus anymore. They had to take everything.
Yeah.
So the incision and everything was really like knowing what's going on, you know. And at this, like, after Nate came and sat by me, and they're like, "Okay, we're gonna start cutting. So I want to sit here, you know. Nate, don't be peeking if you are lightheaded or anything." But I think he said he looked. And the baby came out. He was born at 9:51. I got to see him very quick second, you know, and then they got to work, like, doing everything that they needed to do. He was 2 pounds, 12 ounces, 15
I saw
inches.
One of the pictures you shared of by a Sharpie.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just how small.
Yeah, how
the
tiny.
Babies can be.
Yeah, his diaper was like the size of a cracker.
I saw that too, and I'll share that.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's insane.
Yeah, and they took him, one of the anesthesiologists, he said, do not leave with that baby until she sees him better. And so just the kindest human, you know. I remember his accent. I remember, like, if I saw him, even though I only saw this amount, I heard his voice, I would know it. Yeah. And he was just, like, adamant that I saw him before I went down. Like, who knows what's going to happen, you know?
Yeah.
And they put the mask over my face, and I'm very claustrophobic. And I was like, please don't do that. Put me out before you do this. Like, anything but doing that to me, you know? And, like, that was my panic moment.
Yeah.
Even though they'd already, you know, put an 8-inch incision down. And
your panic should have been gone.
Yeah. Well, and they're moving things, you know, and I started throwing up. And it is the weirdest sensation knowing that your entire abdomen is open, but for some reason you're able to, like, throw up.
Weird.
Hope you might have to censor that, but
no,
yeah, of all that, like, that's the most. That was so memorable for me. I'm like, how am I throwing up right now? My abs aren't even touching. You know, it was crazy. Yeah. And then out
the whole
I went.
Process to me, being a man, is just insane.
Oh my gosh, that a female body can grow a penis inside your stomach.
Yes.
That part.
Yes.
Like, I've done it 3 times, which, like, my mind can't, like, that just blows my mind.
Separate human inside of your body.
It's amazing. Thank God we can.
Yeah.
Thank God women do it.
Yeah, I do not want to.
But yeah, so he was born at 9:50.
2 pounds, 12 ounces?
15 inches. Yep.
Man, just a little tight.
Yeah,
And then the next 75 days?
He was in NICU. Mm-hmm.
In the NICU.
Yep.
And, I mean, that's its whole nother bag of...
Yeah, because I'm still a mom, and recovery after that, you know, I was in surgery. I remember waking up and seeing the clock at 3 p.m. And he was born at 9:50 a.m.
In the morning, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And when the doctors went up and, you know, said, hey, everything went well, I lost 5 liters of blood, which is like, I think all the blood you have in your body.
Yeah.
So I definitely, they said that they were taking me at that time was that it needed to be done at that time. They were relieved that they did when they did, because it would not have been good if I would have went longer. Plus the bladder involvement, they did have to take a little bit of my bladder. And in some cases with the Procreta, you'd have to lose your bladder or half your bladder. And, you know, after having kids, you're already peeing yourself. Yeah. So, like, you need as much bladder as you can get, you know. And so I had to be fitted with a catheter, and I had to, you know, have a bag. And, like, that of everything, I think, was the worst part, you know. But Vaughn went up to level 1 because he was so young. And then I delivered Vonnie on Wednesday, and on Friday, James had chemo that week. So my goal was to get to chemo. I wanted to go there.
Be there with your son.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I wheeled up. I don't know what time I got to my room. Maybe after 6 after I delivered Vonnie, and my mom was in there, and she had to leave the room. She couldn't look at me. She's like, you looked dead. And I lost all my blood.
Yeah, all of your blood went out of your
I
body.
have somebody else's blood right now. Not me.
Yeah.
I am, but not. Part of
the
me is
inside
somebody else. Yeah. And so,
Yeah.
I thought I looked great. I was real pale. I had a lot of freckles that I'd never seen before.
Yeah.
But, and I sent a picture to my family, a selfie, and at one point they had put the breathing tube in my mouth, and they, in surgery, you have to sign off, hey, if we break your teeth or anything, that's too bad.
It's all a possibility.
Yeah, but they had hit me, and I woke up and had a huge fat lip. They had hit my lip.
It?
Yeah, and I remember waking up being like, and I asked Liz, I'm like, do I have a fat lip? And she's like, yeah, I think they got you with the breathing tube. And I'm like, okay.
Gotcha.
Well, I'm alive. I'm
yeah.
looking, I can't wait to see my lip.
It's a good way to think about it.
So, yeah, but he went to the other hospital, and, I got wheeled in and to my room, and then they eventually moved me to another floor. And I had to walk. You have to move. You have to walk, because after surgery, you have to get all the air out of your body.
Yeah.
You've got, and I had an epidural for 3 days in my back because of the surgery and everything that I had done. It was pretty extensive. So
Yeah.
I made it. My husband wheeled me to Children's Hospital, and I made it to James's chemo. And
Just wild.
yeah. And then after that, I went and saw my other kid, Vonnie, and
making your rounds.
Yep, yeah. Nobody else better come down here. I'm not trying to see anybody else
Hell
today.
Yeah.
But yeah, you just mom adrenaline is real. I think is definitely mom adrenaline. That's
For
what
sure.
I had going on with
To be
me.
able to get through all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I
be
had a
there for both
goal
of them.
and a focus,
Yeah.
and
Focus. Singular
Yeah.
focus is being present for your kids.
yeah,
I
yeah.
love
And
it.
Vonnie did really great. He was incubated for, I think, only 24 hours, where they actually put an actual breathing tube down him.
For him.
Yes, and that was simply because they give a preemie surfactant, which is almost like lubrication for your lungs, because
Yep.
make them open and close without sticky, because they can't
Develop
yet. So he got that, and they took that breathing tube out, and then he was on RAM cannula, which is like the pressure that they push into him to breathe. And he stayed on that for some time, and basically he never needed more than 6. A 6 was the highest RAM he had, and we breathe at a 4. So he
Not much more.
No, yeah, he
Yeah.
did so well. It was so amazing.
Heck yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And how old is he now?
6 months. He'll be 6 months on the 27th.
And
Tomorrow.
are there any lingering health issues?
Not that we know
Healthy,
of.
happy baby
Yeah,
boy?
he came home on day 75. Mm-hmm.
That's wild to
Yep.
think about that much time.
Yep.
spent
He was
there.
due January 20th, and he was born October 27th.
Yeah.
And we moved him from Iowa City to Dubuque.
Okay.
And he was in Dubuque's NICU for a week. And we did that just for my sanity.
Precaution.
My sanity. Because my older two I was gone.
Yeah,
I was gone
for a
sleeping.
long shot.
Yeah, I'd stay a night at the hospital and come home and go back and stay in Von's room. And at one point I just said, it's getting really hard to choose what kid I'm going to love today, because I had to choose between 4 kids, and they all
Meanwhile,
need things.
You have needs.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Again, bread garden, coffee. They met what I needed.
Yes.
But at the same time, my focus is always my kids, and it's more. I mean, a lot of parents are that way, and then having a marriage to try to get through too, because that's stressful in itself.
Yeah.
You don't have time for each other,
Right.
let alone we're gone all the time, and you have to pick who's going to be with who at this point, you know. So getting Vonnie to Dubuque, even though it was only 1 week, that was I was so more relaxed. It was hard to take him from the care he got in Iowa City.
Yeah.
But he didn't need that level of care, so we opened up a room for another kid who might need that.
Very true.
So, and Dubuque did a great job. Mercy in Dubuque did a great job. His pediatric doctor, I really like her. And, we could go in after work and see our kid, where you couldn't do that if he was in Iowa City, because you're stretched too thin.
Yeah,
I had the older two. And then during this whole time, Evan's hair is falling out.
Yeah.
And so, like...
And he's trying to navigate that as a
yeah,
young
so
kid.
you have to be there. And
You
then
have
we've
to
got
be there.
Elena. She's just, I don't know, she's a rock star.
She is making it pretty,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
She's got a lot to deal with
Yeah.
for a little girl.
They do. And, this whole time, after Evan's hair started falling out, and people will tell you alopecia is all about stress. There's stress. There's more to it than just stress. So then when I'm reading and I'm talking and looking at this, I'm like, God, have I just failed my kid because did I not,
I know what you're saying.
How do I tried
Balance.
to juggle the best I could. And, we would take the kids to Iowa City and we would stay in a hotel. So we'd have family time together, but then we would go and visit the baby, and we'd take turns going to visit the baby, or we'd stay with my sister and her husband. Yeah, do fun things, be together, but also try to get to see Bonnie too, So here we are. We're almost a year later to James's diagnosis. May 17th will be a year. He has one more chemo treatment on May 6th. Yeah, I'm super pumped for that. Yeah. And then our whole new normalcy starts again.
We got to get back to some sort of new.
But nothing will ever be normal. No. We've got, just like any type of cancer, you have this.
Afterwards.
It's going to come back,
forever.
Yeah. The checkups, the follow-ups. He's got a port. He'll have to have surgery to have that removed, which would be a great day, but a scary day. Right. Surgery's scary, and... It just, we don't know what to expect next. It's unknown. What James has is so rare. It's a 1 in 200,000.
Wow.
Which that seems small, but in Iowa, I think on average, 47,000 kids are born a year. So James is 1 in every 5 years. There's a kid with what he has. I haven't met anybody in our state or at the U that has what James has. Right.
So then you guys start thinking about care. And this is all new to doctors, too, as you're going through it.
Yeah. Our pediatrician that James had that we started with in Dubuque, she apologized so many times, right? The guilt. She felt terrible that she missed it. She called me on Monday morning when she got the notes from the ENT. Yeah. She called me that day and apologized and was very upset. And... she gave me her personal cell phone number. Said, please text me. Please call me. I don't get updates from there, so please keep me up to date. And the whole week was just so busy, And Thursday, after we got the diagnosis, I followed up with her, and I called her, and I talked to her, and she was so upset with herself. And I just said, you're a human being.
Yeah. Let's not forget that. We're all
you're a
humans.
human. And if one thing that I could tell her was, you're a human, you can't know everything. There's a reason they call it practicing.
Very true.
You're still learning.
Yeah.
What James has is rare. I don't hold you to blame. I blame myself more for not looking further and, but that's just a parent thing, right? Nobody can tell you don't feel that way because you're going to feel that way. And I can't tell the doctor don't feel that way because she's going to feel that way. But
help lighten that load.
I said, if anything, you've learned from something, and you're going to teach somebody else. Or, and when we went back for a well child visit after that, she told me that me being so compassionate towards her basically kept her from quitting.
Hell yeah. In that dire time of need when someone had such question about if they were even doing the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And my sister had mentioned, do you ever think about going to therapy?
Yeah.
To get through all of this. And I'm like, my therapy is just talking to people and being helpful for other people. We've experienced so many really crazy things, right?
Yeah.
And James, all these kids that have these terrible diseases, they are truly heroes because they're going to help save somebody down the road.
Very much so.
My father-in-law, I know you're going to listen to this and be like, what in the world? I know he had a hard time and he struggled, Why James? Why James? And we always say, why not? Somebody's got to take the baton. Somebody has to lead the way. Somebody has to be a hero for somebody else. There are thousands of kids who have died from this disease so that my son's not going to die, right? So my son's taken his baton, unfortunately. He's got to take this one, and lead. And His doctor's going to learn something for the next kid. Same with me. Same with Vaughn. Like we participate in studies, research, because it's so important.
Yeah.
Right now, Texas Children's Hospital, Dr. Ken McLean is like a renowned LCH doctor, and Dr. Dickens follows a lot of him.
Yeah.
We go off of his
guidance.
Like a lot of that. And actually, what's crazy is like also Japanese, they have a high rate of LCH. And so a lot of the teachings and studies and stuff come from there.
Yeah.
And the chemo treatments that we use haven't changed since like the 60s because there's not a lot of funding for children's.
Rare cancers.
4% out of all the government funding for cancer goes to pediatric cancer research. 4%. Yeah. It's terrible, but
it is terrible. You
can argue, well, don't fix what's not broken, but how do you know you can't make that better?
Better, yeah. Yeah.
Right? So, but back to, why not me? You just have to shift it. You know?
Mindset shift.
Yeah.
Or you're not going to be able to accomplish some of these things that life's putting in front of us.
You will go insane.
Yeah.
You will go insane because
there's not an answer to everything.
No. And for me, I like to share this information. And a lot of times it's, how do you spread awareness without spreading fear?
Yeah. Yep.
Right? With LCH, because someone's going to hear us like, oh, my kid has a weird rash and they have an ear infection. But to bring that up and that there could be a concern, but it's not always going to be that. So, everybody that you ever talk to that has a kid with cancer, they'll tell you their story and like things get brushed aside because it's so similar to smaller things, and just unfortunately some people have to have it be a bigger thing.
Yeah.
And what's great for, at Level 11 has a family group on Facebook because COVID takes away that camaraderie, that ability to meet and chat. And, if you're unfortunate enough to have to be a part of that group, you join that and we meet families and we're there to, lift each other.
Hell yeah.
People come down for outpatient treatments and are like, brought donuts, dropped them off, like, does anyone need a coffee, and James and, James, our story, that's put people out there that they want to help. They want to do things. And, our family's been able to help contribute and lead fundraisers and lemonade stands and do all kinds of fun things for other families. So you got to use your position wisely,
use what you're given. Hell yeah.
And, there's families who have been diagnosed close to home with little ones with cancer, and I've been able to, I connect as soon as I can because these are the things you're going to need.
Yeah, been there.
Yeah, and these are things you're not going to be prepared for, but, these are things I've learned, and I hope that I can help in that a little bit because I can't take it away,
right.
But I can be here to help you or I can give you advice. I'm not always right, but...
You've been there.
I've been there, yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Without you getting out of here, I have to take you to the firing range.
Oh, great.
It's a lightning fast game of this or that. You
okay,
just
I'm familiar.
Choose whichever speaks to you.
Okay.
Thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I think so much of your family's strength, the things that you've been through and the things that you're getting through, it's going to be so much for people to be able to hear that, and they will be able to draw so much out of it. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you, Buck Current of Hawkeye Storage and Consulting and Katie Hine of Mattress by Appointment. I could not do this without you guys, so thank you so much. Are you ready to rock and roll?
Yeah,
Ashley?
bring it.
Hawkeyes or Cyclones?
Oh my gosh, Hawkeyes.
Easy, right?
Yeah.
Spring or summer?
Summer.
Vacation or a homebody?
Someday vacation.
Big city or small town?
Small town.
Fly or drive?
Fly.
Participate or watch?
Participate.
Lake day or water park?
Water park.
Planner or surprise?
Surprise.
Chocolate or peanut butter?
Oh, can I have both together?
You can.
Okay.
Are you waking up early or are you sleeping in today?
Early.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you
I appreciate
for having
it,
me.
Ash.
Thank you.
Special thanks to my friend Katie Hine at Mattress by Appointment, Cedar Falls, for her sponsorship of Season 2 of The World with Nate.